Hello, happy Wednesday. This is Jamie with Stonemaier Games, of course. Not that you necessarily know me, but I am on the Stonemaier Games channel, so you probably guessed that much. Yeah, I am here today for my weekly live cast, putting my little sticky note on my screen here. Thank you for joining me today, whether you're here right now or if you're watching this in the future on YouTube, because I put all these videos on YouTube now in case you want to check back on them later. Last week, I really appreciate, especially on YouTube, all the people who expressed their concern for my cat Biddy, who is now back with me. He's on the floor here, a little out of camera view here, with a cone of shame on his head. Biddy had a big issue last week, even the week before that, where he had a big urinary blockage that the doctors could not clear. It wasn't crystals. Maybe you've heard of male cats getting crystals. That wasn't the case here. It was something else that they couldn't even really determine, but he ended up having surgery to open up his urinary area, and now he's healing well. He's eating much better now. He's on some medications, but he's doing much better, and I really appreciate your concerns about him while he was gone. I missed him a lot, having him not be here. I also spent part of last week at a wedding in rural Virginia. So while Biddy was going through surgery, I was out of cell phone reception for a large part of the time, which was a little nerve-wracking, but he was in good care with the vets, and I was able to have a good time at the wedding because I knew he was in good hands with the vets. It was a really, really beautiful wedding, really great time. I'm not seeing any. Oh, there they are. Facebook only takes a minute to show me who is here and any comments here, but I guess you guys can hear me talking. That's good. Grant says there's a different angle on the camera. Yeah, Grant, I switched this a few weeks ago per the recommendation of Megan, my girlfriend. She pointed out that people probably didn't want to see the litter box in the corner of my camera screen, and that so I just shifted the camera over to this monitor. I have two monitors here, one on the right, one on the left. So I shifted it over to this one, and yeah, a little different angle, better lighting, I think, from what I've heard. Charles says, after your Sunday sit down, how many Tapestry inserts do you anticipate will be lifted, and how many Tapestry linings will be slit open looking for hidden stuff? Yeah, Charles is referring to a really fun Sunday sit down video I did this past week. I mentioned 6 hidden things that were found in various tabletop games, things that were very secretive in tabletop games that you may not ever even know about. So you might want to watch this video. There might be stuff that you haven't even heard of that's in a game that you have. And but Charles, it truly wasn't a hint towards Tapestry. There are Easter eggs in Tapestry, but there's no hidden thing in Tapestry. So people are welcome to lift up the insert to look underneath, but I hope they don't slice open the lining, because there's nothing in there. I do love putting hidden things in there, but with Tapestry, I limited that to Easter eggs. But there might be games in the future where we have little hidden things like that. David says, anything hidden inside the landmark buildings? No, don't crack open those landmark miniatures. They will be hard to put back together, although you could probably glue them back together. But yeah, don't go looking in there. I hope I haven't started a wild goose chase now for things that are not hidden in Tapestry, because there's, as far as I can remember, I don't think there's anything hidden inside Tapestry other than Easter eggs. Jan says, how many cards are there in the Wingspan expansion? It's a great question, Jan, but we're not there yet. We're on Tapestry right now. After Tapestry, we'll talk about Wingspan. Rob says, where's my workspace? Have I written an article on that or shared photos? Yeah, I think I've shared a photo. I've definitely written articles about it. I have a home office. So this room that you're seeing here is both my game room and my office. And I have a separate bedroom. It's basically a 2-bedroom condo with a really big room right here that I used to use my bedroom. Then I shifted the bedroom over to a smaller room, and now this is my home office and game room. Yeah, and I'm in St. Louis, in case you were asking for the meta view of where I am. Brian says, oh no, Brian says he's going to burn his Tapestry box to the ground and shift through the ashes for the secret Jamie is hidden inside the cardboard. There's nothing inside the Tapestry cardboard box. I really don't think so. I hope I am not forgetting something here, but I really don't think there's anything hidden in the Tapestry game. No, there isn't. Just Easter eggs. Martin says that he saw that I backed Merchant's Cove. What was it that made me back it, and which character are you most excited to play? Well, Martin, partially, I saw it pop up, and then I heard that you were involved with it, and so I was even more curious. I took a look, and I was very curious about the the asymmetry in the game, the strong asymmetry from faction to faction. I have to admit, full disclosure, I backed at a low level. I have not backed for a full copy of the game yet because it is pretty expensive. Like the auto buy level for me usually tops out around 69. If I'm really interested, I would say between 49 and 69 is like the auto buy range or less. Merchant's Cove is a little bit more expensive, especially if you want all the factions. So it's not an auto buy for me yet, but I am very curious about the strong asymmetry and how it has been connected a little bit to Root. Ken says, does the Tapestry insert allow for sleeved cards? Yes and no. So there are two big sections of the Tapestry insert that are open for people to use as they wish. However, the way I use them, and the way I think most people will use them, is to put player token bags in those inserts along with all the buildings that go with each player's income mat. Those two big sections fit all of those miniatures, whereas the cards are just meant to be put in Ziploc bags, which come with the game and then put on top of the game itself. So it's not really a question of whether or not cards can fit because they're not intended to fit. They're intended to put in plastic bags, and we did make the plastic bags big enough to fit sleeved cards. I think it is possible that cards could fit in those little containers, but it's not the intention. I probably wouldn't recommend it. And yeah, so I would say not. The cards just aren't meant to go in the insert. They're meant to be put in plastic bags. Asant says, to be honest, did you pause through Rado's sped up final thoughts to read his facial expressions? Rado hasn't posted his final thoughts yet. Rado's just put his playthrough. I think he had like a fake final thoughts video. I didn't even watch it, but I'm guessing he says these aren't my final thoughts. That'll come later. But yeah, Rado hasn't posted his final thoughts video yet. And I actually don't watch or read reviews of my own games or of our own games because I want to stay completely unbiased as a human being as to which reviewers I send review copies to. So I wouldn't want there to be a reviewer who's doing a great job who just doesn't happen to like a certain one of my games. I wouldn't want to have that human side of me come through and say, oh, I don't want to send stuff to that reviewer anymore. That's why I don't actually read or watch reviews from reviewers. Jennifer says Jamie has now made it okay to shorthand Wingspan expansions to Wingspansions. And yeah, I totally love the term Wingspansions. I can't remember who coined that, but someone said it in the Wingspan Facebook group a while ago. And it's just an easier way to say Wingspan expansions. Famous designer and publisher Keith is here. Keith says he finally got the chance to play Wingspan. Excellent production. Hope I got my copy of Cartographers earlier this week. And Keith, I did. Let's see if I can see it on the shelf where I put it. Yeah, it's kind of horizontal above one of these white boxes. It's probably hard to see on camera here, but I did get it. I'm looking forward to playing it along with, unfortunately, about a dozen other games on my shelf that I haven't played yet. So I have a bunch that I need to get through. I don't know, Keith, if you struggle with this, but I struggle now to find time to actually read through the rule books of a game because I'm so immersed in my own company. It's so much more helpful when someone in my game group maybe borrows one of the games and learns the rules and teaches me. But I need to get back to that, otherwise I'm never going to catch up with a bunch of games on my shelf that I really want to play. Charles says, have I been following the updates about the new Yedo edition coming to Kickstarter on September 9th? Would I forego my old edition for a newer one? I'll have to see. I haven't been following the updates. I think I'll just catch up when the Kickstarter goes live. I am very curious because it is a game that has a lot that I really love. I don't know if I mentioned this in a previous video, but it's a game that I really love so much, but that I think has some flaws, that I reached out to Nathan and Molly at Pandasaurus and I said, hey, if you guys, like, I don't know if I want to put this out here, but maybe if the rights ever become available, I might be interested in either getting the rights or maybe offering some of my thoughts in case you guys want to revise some stuff. And I think in the end, Pandasaurus isn't the publisher of the deluxe new version. So no one really asked for my thoughts there. But I did have a few little things that I thought I might fiddle with to make the game maybe a little bit less tight, a little bit shorter, just a few little things. So I'm curious to see if they happen to do any of those things in the revised version. We'll see. I'm pausing here because I think one of you, I said something or I read something from one of you that triggered a thought, and I should have written it down right away, and now I'm forgetting it, but hopefully it'll come back. Oh, actually, yeah. No, I have it. I might have time this afternoon to learn a short game for game night tonight. I'll have to see. Actually, one of the other reasons, I don't know if any of you experience this, but one of the things that makes me hesitant about learning a game is that if I commit to learning a game, I actually sit down, I learn it, and then it doesn't end up getting played right away at game night. My game nights are on Wednesday. Then oftentimes I feel like I have to relearn the game to play it again. So I only want to do that once. So maybe I need to implement a better system for my game night to make sure that if I actually go through the steps of learning the game, that I can actually play that game that night. Dane says he likes these live shows a lot. Oh, thanks, Dane. I appreciate that. It's refreshing to hear from a developer instead of it being a mysterious overlord situation. Yeah, I'm not particularly mysterious. Maybe sometimes an overlord, but yeah, I really love these live shows. You guys make it easy by asking questions. That's a lot of fun. I actually don't have a ton of topics tonight because I'll talk a little bit more about the wedding trip. The only game that I really played in the last week was just one. I played that, introduced that to family the other day while I was at the wedding. But I missed my game night last week. It was kind of weird. I host a weekly game night, but I had to go to the hospital to get Biddy to transfer him to a different hospital for surgery, and it just happened to coincide with game night. So as people were arriving at my game night, I was leaving to go get Biddy and would spend the next around 4 hours taking care of Biddy's needs in those regards because there was a long way to the clinic. So I'm hoping to finally get back to game night tonight, and hopefully I'll have some more games to talk about. And even as I was saying that, I had something else to share about games, but now I am forgetting. I did. This Sunday will be twice a year. I do my top 10 favorite games at that current moment, and for the first time this time, so I'm doing that on my Sunday sit down, and it'll be on my personal blog on Sunday night. I think for the first time I used Pub Meeple's ranking system. I don't know if any of you have ever tried this thing, but if you look for Pub Meeple game rankings, I think you'll find it, and it basically imports in your lists from Board Game Geek based on any rating that you want. I used it from ratings 8 and higher for my list. And then it matches up games and you select which one. But it's not tournament style. You'll see the same game pop up multiple times with different matchups with different games. And then it'll take that information and determine your top 75 games. So I've used that for my top 10 list for the first time. I might change it a little bit because I'm not exactly sure if I like the complete results, but at least the top 20 I think is really accurate. I might change the order a little bit, but it's really cool if you're trying to figure out what your top 10 favorite games are right now. It's a really cool system to use. Whitney says, is there a chance you will be at any of the Comic-Con conventions in the future? I guess there's a chance. I really don't attend many conventions, Whitney, but maybe there is a chance. I did a long time ago attend the Comic-Con in St. Louis very briefly. I was, I think, demoing viticulture a little bit there. But yeah, I don't have any plans, but maybe if it coincides perhaps with another trip or if I make a trip around it, it's possible. Do you have any that you would recommend? I've heard there are quite a few now, not just the famous one in San Diego. David says, how many copies of Wingspan have been produced so far or are in the works? How does this compare to Scythe? Is this your largest single game hit? So Scythe is over 300,000 units in circulation at this point. And I think there are a few more in print that'll take it over, not well over 300,000, but probably close to 350. Wingspan, I haven't run the numbers lately, but I think by the end of the year, in all languages, there will be about 150,000 copies of Wingspan in print, which is a lot. And that is definitely more than any of our other games in the first year of the game's life. Yeah, I think in Scythe's first year, not calendar year, but the first 12 months, there were probably around 100,000 copies in print in various languages. So Wingspan has had a more rapid ascension in those regards than Scythe did. Marcus says, one of my favorite games is Battlestar Galactica, the co-op trader game. I've got another like it on the way, Warehouse 13, but I wonder if you've ever thought about entering that particular genre of game. I'd be interested in seeing your spin. I think your designs are typically more playable among a wider variety of people. Well, thank you, Marcus. I appreciate that. I am working on a cooperative game, but as of now, it does not have a trader element. I don't think it would work with a trader element. I do happen to really love games like Scotland Yard. Scotland Yard is one of my favorite games that doesn't have a trader, but it is one versus many, which cooperative trader games end up being. And so I would love to explore that genre of game someday. The Scotland Yard one versus many, maybe a little bit of hidden, or maybe a lot of hidden information. That is a genre I would like to explore someday. So I don't know if that falls into the category that you're interested in, but that's something that I'm really interested in. John says, how many copies did I send out for reviews of, I'm guessing you're asking about Tapestry. I received what I believe 12 advanced copies. I have one on my shelf back there. 3 went to non-reviewers that needed to do important stuff with the games. Dusty at the mill, Kim for the nice photos, and Rodney for watch it play video. And that leaves 8. So 8 went to reviewers. Doug says, what's the #1 game on my wish list that isn't in my collection because it's either impossible to find or prohibitively priced on the resale market? That is a good question, Doug. You know, let me pull up my little wish list here and give you an exact answer. Let me look at the wish list because I think that'll help. So my wish list are usually games that I'm very interested in, maybe a little hesitant to buy simply because I haven't played all the games on my shelf right now or because they're sold out. But let me see if there are any that are actually sold out on my wish list. The only one currently that's sold out on my wish list or is not available for pre-order is Inuit the Snowfolk, which is a game that Tom Vassell reviewed very recently, which is probably why it's out of stock. But all the other games on my wish list are either on pre-order or in stock. So, yeah. I actually see one right now that popped up that I didn't realize was for pre-order. So when I get off this video, I'm going to have to go get that one. Yeah. What about you, Doug? What's your Grail game that you really want that you're just not able to get right now? Scott says, do I have any? Oh, and Scott asked about Grail games too. Good, back-to-back questions about the same thing. George says, are numbered copies reserved as orders are placed, or is it random? It's completely random. So think about it this way. So the order matters, not the numbers on the. So well, I'll back up. Tapestry is individually numbered. The first printing of Tapestry in English is individually numbered from 1 to 25,000. And as we get orders, we will be sending out those games. However, we sent games to fulfillment centers around the world in Canada, Australia, UK, and the US. And I don't know which numbers went to which fulfillment center. And imagine like 2 big trucks of pallets of games arriving at a warehouse that is fairly tight. And so the pallets are being pulled off and put in different parts of the warehouse. They're being pulled off in different orders. One truck might have those pallets pulled off. Another truck might have pallets pulled off. And then the people who are fulfilling the games are just tearing open those pallets and getting the games out and just shipping them out. If we, and I know you're not asking this, but I just want to explain it just because people probably, I have gotten this question a bunch. Imagine if I said, okay, fulfillment center, I need you to fulfill 5,000 games in the next week, but customer number 32017 wants game number 7901. Can you imagine like the logistical nightmare that would happen as a result? And that's not even that's asking for a specific number. Even if it was in a specific order, like one up, it wouldn't work that way because the games are in different fulfillment centers. They're just organized in random places in the warehouse. So yeah, it is not logistically possible at all to send either specific numbers to anyone or to have the numbers go out in a specific order to people as the orders are received. Nathan says, when did the second printing of Tapestry get green lighted? The second printing, I was going to wait until after the pre-orders, but I gave distributors the option of prepaying for a second print run early. And so there were a few distributors who decided that it was worth the risk for them to prepay for a second print run. And so we are making a second print run. We've already started it. I think it should arrive in early December. And the vast majority of those copies are going to distributors. I also added some of my own to sell through a web store and possibly through distribution if we don't sell out. But yeah, if you see copies in stores in December, you have a few very specific distributors to thank for taking a risk on that. I know that's a little behind the scenes, but I thought it was pretty neat that they did that. They were definitely looking out for customers in that way. Mike says, what game that is new to you on my shelf am I most excited about getting to my table? Well, Cartographer's just arrived. I'm certainly very excited about that. There are a bunch of other ones. Campaign Trail, I'm really curious about. I know that's back there. Plane Crafters, Vegin. I know I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I have a few games. Spirits of the Forest looks beautiful. I don't know. I literally have about a dozen that I really want to get to. There's an escape room game, escape room in a box that I really want to do. There's too much. So I'm hosting a game day on Monday to hopefully catch up with some of those games. Garrett says, just joining, this may be asked already, but what's the shipping expectation after pre-ordering Tapestry? There's a shipping chart on our website that you can see that has the exact times. But basically, if you order Tapestry from us during the pre-order period, September 4th through the 7th, in most parts of the world, it will start to ship to you the week of September 9th. It depends on how many pre-orders are placed. I think those shipments will continue through the next week too. It'll probably take about 2 weeks to ship all of them out. But basically what I'm saying is people will receive them in September is the hope and the anticipation, as long as nothing goes terribly wrong. So you'll receive your pre-ordered copy of Tapestry sometime in September. Suzanne says, did I miss anything? I just joined. Of course you missed some things, Suzanne. We've been talking for 25 minutes now, but you can go back and see what you missed. Gerald says, did you learn a way to not give in to popular backer requests during the heat of a campaign? Do you learn a way to not give in to popular backer requests? Yeah, so during like a Kickstarter campaign, I have a few blog entries about this, about how to how to say no, how to be okay with saying no. And I guess the tough one that you're referring to here is, what if a lot of backers are requesting the same thing? And sometimes that can be a sign that it might be worth considering what they're requesting, but doing so in a way that is fiscally responsible for you. So if 1,000 backers have voted to say, hey, we really want metal coins in the game, that doesn't make you responsible to just shove metal coins into the game and take the loss yourself. But it does mean that you could consider considering the budget and the schedule, the impact on the schedule of adding them as an add-on. And that way, those backers, if they want to put their money where their mouth is, they can spend extra money to get those metal coins. If they just want free stuff, everybody loves free stuff. You can't always listen to that. You have to be responsible for your own budget, your own company's survival in those regards. In my opinion, that's my approach. Dwayne says he's so excited and he just wanted to tell you that we unlocked the Games for Kids stretch goal on my little campaign. Backers can now donate discounted copies of the 1,000 Year Beard. That's great, Dwayne. I'm glad to hear that you reached that stretch goal. Sarah says you showed some prototype player mats for Wingspan on the game's Facebook page. Prototype player mats. Any news on when? Oh, the neoprene mats. Yeah. Any news on when they'll be available for sale? Yeah, I plan on offering them during the actually, I don't know exactly when yet. It's not yet. It's coming soon. It's in relation to the Wingspan expansion, but I think I might offer them even earlier than that. It'll probably be at the same time, just so people can just consolidate shipping and get all that stuff all at once. So later in 2019. Tim says, well, was the capital city map inspired by Sudoku? It wasn't. I do have something in a game that was inspired by Sudoku, but the capital city mats in Tapestry were more inspired by things like Patchwork and A Feast for Odin. Keith is responding to my question to him about learning games. He says he agrees. I have my regular game group, and I used to be the main teacher, but now I am always hoping to play new stuff that my friends can teach me. That's me too, Keith. I struggle to find time to play published stuff when there's so much TWG stuff to worry about. I've started to refocus on that more. I haven't had as much of a problem with that because I have devoted time every week, Wednesday game night, when we don't play unpublished stuff. It's only published games. So I don't have as much of a problem with that. It's more learning games that are on my shelf that I own that I want to play. Renee says, I don't remember if you've made a video of Vindication, but have you played it? If so, what are my thoughts on it? Yes, I did. I played it once. I've only played it once so far, and I do have a video about it. And I thought it had some really cool elements to it. I really enjoyed it. I loved the flavor of the different like the pets or the companions that you can add, pets and companions that you can add, the different weapons, how it has a good amount of theme, but it's also very much a Euro game. My favorite mechanism, I think, was related to the victory point track. But check out the video on my channel about Vindication if you want to know more. Stevens pointed out something very good here, that Rodney has a great video for cartographers. So there are other resources. If I don't want to read a rule book, I could just watch a video and know how to play the game that way. Jeremy says, is it possible that the pre-orders will sell out? Usually not Cult of the New Guy, but this one has me frothing at the mouth. Yeah, Jeremy. This is probably a good time to say this. I'm going to say it in next week's e-newsletter as well. I've been very public in saying that we made 25,000 first printing English copies of Tapestry. However, I have there is a cutoff. So I've made a cutoff that a certain number of those games will be available for the pre-orders, and the rest of them will go to distributors and distributors who sell to retailers. So because I don't want it to be a not that I can completely avoid the Wingspan situation here, because it depends on what demand for the game is. But basically, I want to make sure that I have a decent number of games for distributors and a decent number of games for direct pre-orders. So I'm not going to say the exact number, because I don't think any good will come of that after my whole Wingspan experience. But basically, there is a certain number that is less than 25,000 that will be available on the pre-order next week. And when those copies are gone, they're gone. We won't have any more for a while until we reprint it, which we are doing. So I don't want it to be a mad dash or a race. I truly want people to be able to take the time to watch the reviews and decide if it's a game for them. But there is a distinct chance that Tapestry will sell out during the pre-order period next week. Yeah. Amy says, how come I decided to make Tapestry the most expensive in my line? Well, it wasn't a decision where I said, okay, I want to make the most expensive game in our line. I would rather make not the most expensive game in our line, but I had a certain vision for Tapestry in terms of the components in the game. Like, I wanted it to be a very special aesthetic and tactile experience on the table, and the cost of the game just happened to add up to be more expensive than any of our other games. So it just that's how it happened. Wes says he started the Rise of Fenris campaign last night with 6 players. Any tips I should pass on so new players won't fall behind? I would actually stress that falling behind isn't that big of a deal in Rise of Fenris. It is a campaign. It is a competitive campaign, but I'm totally, like, I think players want to win. That's good that players have a motivation to win. However, I think it's important for players to keep in mind that they're also telling their own story through the game, and that the winner of the campaign is the winner of the final game. There is very little accumulation over the course of the game. It all comes down to that final game, and maybe little bonuses you've accumulated by doing well along the way. But so if a player does feel like they're falling behind, reassure them, hey, all that matters really is the final game. Just stay in it, keep your chin up, and be ready for that final game. Arthur says, for designers that send you their prototypes, they always send it as a print and play PDFs, or is it common to send physical prototypes through the mail? Yeah, Arthur, I learned this the hard way a while ago. So you're referring to our submission process, which actually sending us a prototype is several layers into that process, several filters in. Otherwise, we would spend all of our time playing unpublished prototypes. But we learned the lesson a while ago that it takes a lot of time to put together a prototype, and that's not our responsibility. That's the designer's responsibility. So if the designer gets to the point where we say we want to play a prototype of this game, we want to experience it, we always require them to send a physical prototype. It is not an option to send us a print and play, so that we have to spend our time putting it together, because it really does take quite a bit of time. And oftentimes we spend all that time putting it together, and then we play it for 10 minutes and realize I don't want to say this is terrible, but there have been some unplayable prototypes despite all the time that we put putting them together. That's rare, but it has happened. Okay, I'm looking for other. Well, I'll look for other comments. I mentioned I did some fun things last week while I was at the wedding. I was out of town in rural Virginia for a wedding, my cousin's wedding. Had a great time, beautiful wedding, and I also got to go on a great hike with Megan when I was there. We went on a hike in the Shenandoah mountain range. The hike was called, oh shoot, what was the hike called? Hawk's Nest hike in Shenandoah. It was a beautiful hike, really strenuous on the way up, a lot easier on the way down, about a 2-mile hike, a lot of fun there. We also ate a lot of crabs, not during the hike, but because we were near the Chesapeake Bay, there were a lot of crabs available. So on the drive from the airport to the wedding, we stopped at a good, highly rated seafood restaurant and had an amazing meal. And then on the way back, we stopped at a seafood restaurant, a different one, and had an amazing meal. So lots of crabs last week. As was already mentioned, my Sunday sit-down video this past week is about finding hidden things in games, and I also discussed some ideas that I didn't do regarding Charterstone and the idea of like golden tickets in games and things like that, things that hopefully wouldn't violate lottery rules. Oh, it looks like Facebook is trying to bump me out of the comments here, so let me reply to some other questions. Chris says, was Walter excited that his friend was back? Walter's been pretty good. Yeah, he's been just good. He hasn't attacked me. Usually he's pretty aggressive. Dane says he's been hearing a lot about Horrified. Have I heard of it? I've heard of it, but I haven't looked much into it yet. But I hope it's good. Alexi says that he's planning to get Tapestry, but his country is notorious for handling packages very poorly. What kind of production do games ordered directly from the site come in? We usually do. We don't do quarter protectors, but we usually do 2 wrappings of bubble wrap to protect the game. And Tapestry is so expensive and individually numbered, so we're really putting a high focus on that for our fulfillment centers to make sure that they treat the game with care when they package it. Mahir says, while designing new games, do I now feel the pressure of Scythe's success and people's expectations of you delivering on a hit similar to Scythe, Viticulture, etc.? I wouldn't say necessarily I feel the pressure. It's more internal, where I want to make something good and special and memorable and unique, but I don't necessarily feel the pressure from past games. Because every game is different. I know every game will find a different audience, and not every game is for everybody. Gerald says, when designing a game, do I initially start with a set player count in mind and then scale it afterwards? Yeah, I always start with a 2 to 6 player count in mind for games, or almost always, and then I sometimes go down to 5. Sometimes we've even increased it above 6 if the game can do that. Jeremy says, have I ever thought about teaming up with another all-star designer? For many reasons, it seems like you and Ryan Lockett would make a great team. A lot of people have mentioned that in the past, and I appreciate that. It's very flattering to be associated with someone as talented and successful as Ryan. Pairing up with another, I don't know if it would work. I tend to become the lead designer just by my design instincts when I am part of a game design process. But and so sometimes I think it helps for me to work with a less experienced designer, not so I can push them around or anything, but just because we fall more naturally into a leader role and then an advocate role on the other designer's part. So, but maybe someday. I think it would be cool to work with certain designers, and Ryan is certainly on that list. Arthur says the advanced copies for reviewers have extra instructions for them. Extra instructions? No, I mean the advanced copies are just normal copies of Tapestry. Let's see. Oh, Joe says, did I miss the chocolate of the day or the week? Ooh, I didn't mention it yet. Let's see. I think I have it over here. So it is dangerous for me to do this. So I went to Whole Foods yesterday, got some chocolate chip cookies, and was it yesterday? Monday? Earlier this week, Monday. And I got these to share at game night, and of course I've eaten way too many of them already. So this is the chocolate of the day that I should not be eating, but I probably will now that you mentioned it, Joe. So, but I don't mind. I as long as I have enough left for game night, I'm okay with it. Let's see. Martin says, I think it would be great if you did a golden ticket style thing where everyone who gets copy number 1 wins a prize or something. Yeah, I guess I could do that on number 1, but I think if someone got the number 1 box, that's already kind of a prize in itself. The There are actually there in the comments of the Sunday Sit Down video. It's a great comments thread about different ideas of how a company could use a golden ticket system to make something fun and not have it feel exclusive or punishing to people who don't get the golden ticket. The idea I'm referring to like the Willy Wonka Chocolate Factory golden ticket thing, where randomly in a few boxes of the games there would be a golden ticket that means something, and people had a ton of really cool ideas about what that might mean. Charlie says, I've seen some Tapestry cards that have perks for being first played, combined with the resource benefit for advancing first. Did I run into any first player advantage in playtesting, especially into the second age? Not really. I mean, that's part of the balance of the game. That's one of the things that can happen in Tapestry is the player who optimizes their resources best and ends the game last can have a slight advantage because they've optimized their resources. And so to counteract that a little bit, there are these other first to achieve bonuses, first to pass into a new era of your neighbors, first to, and the Tapestry cards you mentioned, first to do this, and so I think they tend to balance each other out in the game so that there is less of an advantage if you are optimizing. You can play like a slightly less optimal game, but be the first and get those extra bonuses and use them to have a bit of an advantage there as well. Tim says, I saw the parts in the Dutch commercial are localized. Did I have the video made in multiple languages? Is that completely computer generated or was it refilled? Yeah, so the video was made by a guy named Ben who does stop motion. And Ben, I always, when I do videos like this, I ask for the video editor to send me an English version of the video, but also a version of the video that doesn't have, that's editable basically. So our localization partners can go in and maybe swap out some components. If they want to put in their version of the game, they can swap out the voiceover, do a different voiceover. So I always ask for, I think, at least 2 versions of the video file, one for me, one for localization partners. Doug answered my question about his Grail game. There are a few people who have answered their questions about their Grail games in the comments here. Joe says, rough size of the second print run of Tapestry. Usually I'm pretty open about that, Joe, but for that one, I think I want to keep it under wraps, just out of respect for the distributors who bought into it. It isn't necessarily my information to share there completely. Eventually, I think you'll know. Eventually, I'll talk about the numbers. Let's see. Charles says, what's my favorite Tapestry civilization? That is tough, Charles. I am still somewhat, okay, so, well, I do have one. I do have one that I really like. Not necessarily that I like to play any more than the others, but there's one of them, they're called the Mystics. And the Mystics, at the beginning of the game, they predict how they're going to do in 4 different categories of the game. They basically are saying, okay, at the end of the game, we're going to have this many territories controlled, or this, or this. And the idea of the Mystics is that they play it off like they're telling the future, like they can see the future, but really they're just really good planners. And it says that on the card. There's nothing magical and mysterious about it. Really, they're just really good at planning ahead and achieving their goals. And so I like that. That's a fun little thematic touch that I put in there that I'm happy with. So it's a tough faction to play, but you do have very specific goals that you're going after during the game based on things that you chose. So you could choose to be not ambitious at all in certain categories, and try to achieve that. Let's see. Duffy says, will the retail store copies of Tapestry have the number stamped? Yes. The first print run of Tapestry is 25,000 copies. Some of them will be sold via our pre-order, and the rest will be sold to distributors to be sold at to retailers or through retailers. So all those copies are individually numbered of the first English printing of Tapestry. Brian says, someone in the viticulture group recently asked if there were any campaigns. What would I think about a Fenris-style campaign where rival vineyards build up their fields and winemaking abilities over several generations? It's certainly an interesting idea, Brian. I think I have 2 schools of thought there. One is, that's really cool. That would be awesome. I like the idea. 2 is, it's hard to design campaign games. It's time consuming. And I have a feeling that the market for campaign games is going to decrease. Because people only have so much time. I think it's much easier to get one-off games to the table. So I'm not so sure. I'm not sure that we'll be pursuing many campaign games or campaign expansions in the future. We'll see if that changes. But as cool as the idea is, I'm also caught up in the marketability of it at this point. Jason says, will there be any new mechanisms in the Wingspan or just more cards? I could say you'll just find out, but I'll just say, like, of course we're going to put new mechanisms in it. Yeah, we wouldn't just throw out more stuff. There is more stuff in it, but the more stuff has new mechanisms. Dave says, I can't remember if I saw a video for it, but have I played the Golden Ages? Has that influenced Tapestry at all? The Golden Ages did influence Tapestry, yeah. And I have played it. I played it at Geekway a few years ago. The main influence of it, I would say, is that it has some really cool futuristic stuff that can happen in the game. I can't remember if there are goals in the game or each player has one. It's been a while since I played it, but there's some really cool futuristic stuff in it, and it reinforced the idea that I wanted Tapestry to be a game where you start at the beginning of mankind and actually work into the future of if you want to. I did a blog post about Tapestry. If any of you are curious about like the painted miniatures, the decision to include painted miniatures instead of unpainted miniatures, a short recap of the reason for that, because I think there were some rumors from people suggesting that that maybe we were that the game could have been significantly less expensive if the miniatures had been unpainted, but that actually isn't true, because with the painted miniatures, there was a certain price threshold that I wanted to hit or that I didn't want to go over. And even though using a 5 times multiplier on manufacturing cost, the price should be X, I actually made it X minus Y. I artificially lowered the MSRP. And so what the MSRP would have been for unpainted miniatures is actually just around $9 or $10 lower than what it ended up being. And I think the experience added by the painted miniatures is, in my opinion, worth that extra money. I understand that's highly subjective, but I want to let people know there really is not a big gap between the two. In this particular case, it does cost more to make painted miniatures. It does cost a fair amount more, but by the way that I ended up pricing Tapestry, the price did not end up being much higher at all than if there were unpainted miniatures. I know no one asked about that, but I talked about that, and I also talked about the review embargo, which is basically just giving reviewers plenty of time to review the game and not make them feel like they have to race to be the first. There's no hidden conspiracy there about what reviewers actually think, because I don't know what they think about the game. That's for them to share, and for me to not watch or read, because I don't watch reviews of our games. David says, why is it important that specific capital cities start in specific places? It didn't look like the name Wetlands or design had any connection or player order matters based on the capital. I mean, there is a small thematic connection, which is the art for each capital city hex is supposed to represent the capital city. It also kind of simplifies things. You don't have to randomize play order, just like you know that your capital city pairs with a certain place on the board, and you go there. So it simplifies setup a little bit. Nathan says, any suggestions of how to be involved in the designer and publishing community through social media? Are there any media kinds that don't work? How to be involved? I think that's a great way to ask it, how to be involved. And not it sounds like you're not going into it for selfish reasons. You're going there to just be a part of the community, which I think is great. I think that's a great place to start. There's some great Facebook groups. Walter's not being nice to Biddy right now. Walter, come on, bud. There are some great Facebook groups to join. There's like the Tabletop Game Designers group. There's the Board Game Design Lab group. Look around for game design groups on Facebook. I think they're probably the best place, along with Board Game Geek. I think just actively commenting and participating on Board Game Geek is a great way to go as well. Twitter and Instagram are nice too. They do have, Instagram in particular does have a feeling of community, but I don't think it's quite the same as Facebook or Board Game Geek. George says, are there any plans to get the viticulture wine glasses back in stock? Yeah, George, I was actually just thinking about that yesterday. I need to make another set of them for the holidays. So I'll probably do that in about a month. I'm not in a hurry to do it, but it'll happen pretty soon. Maybe I'll make a pallet of those. I have to make them kind of in mass to make it worth it. George says, what about that viticulture shirt you always wear? How do we get your hands on that? That is on MeepleSource's site. MeepleSource makes that t-shirt. And it is really, really nice. I love that t-shirt. That's why I wear it so much. Duffy says, do I have an Essen pickup option for Tapestry and have it signed by you? No, I won't be at Essen. I'm not involved with Essen. So that you can buy some copies of Tapestry at Essen through Madigo. Madigo will have some of our English copies and some of their French copies, but I don't think they're offering a pre-order. Jamie says, will there be any indication when stock is running low during the pre-order? I don't think Shopify, or the way that we have Shopify set up, shows the quantities in that way. So I think some people will just show up and it won't be in stock anymore. But I will maybe post an update after the first day to let people know how stock is running. I'll make a note about that now. Share Tapestry stock after day one. Matt says, what strategies is Stonemaier considering as the trade war with China continues to ramp up? Is Panda more broadly communicating options with distributors? Well, not distributors. Panda communicates with publishers. Publishers sell to distributors who sell to retailers. I mean, I want to first see if it actually happens, because it was supposed to happen this past summer. It didn't happen. We have some plans in place that will do. But I mean, the main two things are, one, we already ship a lot of games directly to distributors that aren't in the US. I would say about 40%, maybe even higher, because we ship so much to localization partners too, or they coordinate that shipping. So a lot of our games don't even go through the US anymore. And two, if there is a 10% tariff, we will probably have to work with distributors to find a happy medium to make sure that they can remain profitable and that we can remain sustainably profitable as well. So I do not intend on passing on any of those costs to consumers ever. Good job, Biddy. He struggles a little bit now he's in the litter box right now, which you can't see because of the new camera angle, but he has one of those cones of shame right now, which makes it a little difficult for him to use the litter box. But he's doing a good job. Good job, bud. You can see the cone there in the bottom of the camera. Biddy, you look up here? No, he'll just stand there for a minute. Duffy says, which one of the Stonemaier games has the highest margin? None of them, I think, really have that great of a margin. I would say the products of ours that have the best margin are typically expansions, which with expansions, sometimes I go up to a 6 times multiplier, but usually it's right around 5 times, which is pretty much the same margin for all the games. Garrett says, is the Tapestry price public? No, the price will become public on September 4th when the pre-order goes live. James says he's also been to Hawk's Nest, that trail that I went on last week. Let's see, Chris recommends the Peaks of Otter the next time I'm in Virginia. I haven't heard of that. Nice lodge. That sounds like a nice place to go. Peaks of Otter. I don't think I've heard of that. Mitch says, it seems like people are stressed about getting a copy after the success of Wingspan. Do I feel more pressure to deliver a perfect game and now have a perfect ordering experience as I've had more success? I mean, I always want that to happen. I certainly don't. I never want to. With Wingspan, I mean, basically, I did not anticipate the demand for the first print run of the game. I never want that to happen. I want to make enough games for everybody. I also need to make sure I don't make too many games, then I'm stuck with a bunch of games that I can't sell. So the pressure goes both ways. Hopefully I've struck a decent balance with Tapestry, and we'll find out in a few days. George says, when do I plan to visit Europe? I have visited Europe a few times, just not during my board game career. I visited Ireland and the UK. I've also visited France. And I hope to visit next year. Maybe I'd love to go to Italy in particular, and Germany. I think Italy and Germany are near the top of that list. And Greece. I've heard beautiful things about Greece. Chad says, did I ever consider having an actual cloth component in Tapestry? Yeah, that's a neat idea. Since tapestries were traditionally put on cloths. I did never seriously consider it, though. I think the clarity of a printed game board can beat any cloth. It beats neoprene even as well. And plus the board is double-sided. Mario says, has the numbering process changed? My side's collector's edition number is smudged from what seems to be being wrapped before the ink could completely dry. Well, I'm really sorry about that, Mario. It has changed. They've changed the type of printer they use to print the numbers, so that shouldn't be an issue. I hadn't actually ever heard of that happening before, so I'm sorry that happened to your copy. Brian says, have I ever thought about collaborating with Rob Daviau? He's definitely on my list, or another designer to make a legacy version of one of my games. I know you said the legacy mechanisms in Charterstone weren't my favorite thing to design. Well, they were a lot. They were a lot of fun to design. It was just a lot of brain power that was required to make that happen. Rob likes to work with really simple games, or not really simple games, but games that start out with a fairly simple foundation and then add legacy components from there. So I don't know if we have any great candidates for that at this point, but maybe someday. I'd love to work with Rob in general. Matthew says, what did the Tapestry say? Oh, he has a joke. I thought it was actually actual question. Morgan says, where is the numbering on the Tapestry copies? It's on the outside of the box. It's you can't see it here, but it's kind of at the bottom front of the box. Josh says, well, when learning Tapestry for the first time, are there specific factions that I recommend starting out with? I do not have recommended factions. I think people will end up posting lists on Board Game Geek of factions that they recommend as starting factions, but I don't have any in particular. I think players will see. I guess the one thing I would say is if a player draws two factions at the beginning of the game and they're just overwhelmed by both of them, they can either just ignore it. You don't have to really do anything with your faction, or just draw another one and find one that they can more easily comprehend. It's not really, as you're learning the game, it's not a strict thing that you can only pick from those two. Brent says, is Tapestry more of a macro or a micro civilization game? How much time passes with each turn or phase? It is very much a macro civilization game. It's not looking at a specific slice of history. It's not dudes on the map. You're not caring about individual people or anything like that. It is a macro view starting from the beginning of mankind up into the future, both in terms of all the forms of technology you're developing and the story you're telling during the game. So very much a macro view. In terms of how much time passes with each turn or phase, I would say hundreds or thousands of years. Not hundreds of thousands of years, but hundreds or thousands of years. With each turn, each turn I would say is hundreds. Each income turn is maybe 1,000 years. Let's see. Jeremiah says, why do I feel that you shouldn't watch reviews of my games? Not only reviews, but the pre-release videos. Pre-release videos are great. I mentioned it earlier in the video. Quick recap. The reason I don't watch reviews of my own games or our own games is that I am a human being and I don't want to be biased by a reviewer who offers their unbiased thoughts about a game. I don't want to be biased that a reviewer didn't like the last game that they played of ours. I don't want the human side of me to ever say, oh, they didn't like that one, I shouldn't send them this one. So it's basically me acknowledging that I am human and I want to cut out that human component so that I can always send out copies to a variety of reviewers who are going to offer unbiased opinions that help people decide if they want to buy one of our games. Just removing the human element from it, that's all. Kai says, any news about a new game from Mr. Stone, my business partner? Alan doesn't really design games. He's just kind of my lead playtester for many games. Brian says that it seems that in Wingspan, most components are based on the number of 5. 5 players, 5 different eggs. However, I only put 4 plastic bins in the game. Why? You can actually see it on the side of the box how the game is organized. So there aren't 5 containers corresponding with different colors of eggs because the colors of eggs don't matter. It's basically there are 2 compartments. There are 2 containers for eggs and 2 containers for food. That's it. Also, they're kind of a nice bonus. I've heard some people complain about that number 4, but I mean, we threw those in. We didn't have to do that. We did it as a nice bonus. And so if people complain about that kind of stuff, we're just going to stop doing it. So treat it as a nice bonus that there are more than 0 plastic containers in Wingspan. It's not even in the component list. Like we just kind of said, okay, we're going to do this. We'll put them in there because people might like them. Lisa says, Tapestry sounds like a heavier experience from the decision tree for each turn and the length of the game. Do I think that limits the audience a bit more than Wingspan and therefore the number sold? It's certainly possible, yeah, and the price too. I mean, Wingspan is a $55 game. Tapestry costs more than that. So I think there are some ways that the audience will be limited, but for any game, I think I don't want a game to appeal to everybody. I want it to appeal to people who are really interested in that specific game. So sure, yeah, there's always certain limits that like the length and the weight of a game can put on it, but it also opens it up to an audience that doesn't really want to play shorter, lighter games. SR says, how do I stay active and fit at 40? Well, I'll find out when I turn 40. I'm 38 right now. I'm currently, for the last like 3 or 4 months, I've been on a pretty specific regimen where I eat 2 vegetarian meals a day, and then I have 1 more normal meal that involves meat because I love meat. I do love sweets, but I try to not eat too many of them. And I also exercise for about 20 to 30 minutes every day, a different routine. It mainly involves some ab stuff, some core stuff, some weight stuff. And I run literally, like I live in an 8-story building. I run up and down the stairs of my building for about 10 minutes just to get my heart beating. So that's how I try to stay in shape as someone who works full time and is also getting older, and my metabolism isn't what it used to be. Tommy says, how many games are in my collection behind me? I'd say I have about 100 games. Yeah. Well, I think this time it worked out well because it looks like the questions have ended and we're right at 11 o'clock, which is when I typically try to end this. I do have some stuff I need to do this afternoon. I always have my weekly meeting that I have with my business partner. So I'm going to get started on that. I have some notes that I took from this podcast, this livecast. I always have some good thoughts to take away from things that you've shared with me, good questions that you've asked. Oh, it looks like Amy says, I know Tapestry is the focus now, but when is my next release planned, expansion or other? We'll have one other release in 2019. I don't have an exact date on it yet, but we have one other one expansion release in 2019. All right. Thank you all for your questions and for joining me today. And I will I'll see you next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is when the pre-orders for Tapestry start. So we'll be talking about that next Wednesday. Take care. Bye.